Jujutsu Kaisen is filled with multiple intricate and complex curse techniques, the most notable ones being Infinity, Projection Sorcery, and Star Rage. These techniques differentiate curse users from across the verse. Curse techniques are developed at the young age of 8 and grow stronger as the user's CE grows. Gojo also mentions that 80% of a Jujutsu sorcerer's skill set is innate talent. Nonetheless, there are tiers to curse techniques, and the one that stands among the best is the one only second to Gojo, Yuta Okkutsu. It's me, Eli. If you want more content like this, make sure to subscribe and comment and give a big thumbs up. Now before we start the video, I'm going to tell you right now, there will be spoilers up to chapter 251, so if you have not read the manga, I suggest you leave now. In this video, I'm going to split this up into 3 parts, that being Yuta's curse technique, Rika, and his domain, to get a better understanding of what's really going on. Now, if we're going to talk about Yuta's abilities, it's very important to talk about Rika, which is basically the arbiter of all his techniques and moves. To talk about Rika, I think it's also very important to actually understand what Rika is. We get the first glimpse of Rika and Yuta in JJK0, when Rika and Yuta are playing in a sandbox, and Rika goes up to Yuta and gives him a promise ring. Now, keep this in mind because this ring is very important to how Yuta's abilities actually work. We'll talk about that later on in the video. Shortly after this interaction is when we see Rika's unfortunate demise when she is unalived in a car crash. Now, due to this event, Rika would then turn into a vengeful spirit. A vengeful curse is born when a curse user dies through non-curse energy means. We've seen things like this before, e.g. when Nayu was turned into a vengeful curse after being killed by Maki's mother. But for Rika, this case is actually very special because this curse was actually placed by Yuta himself. Because of Yuta's inability to let Rika die, she is now the immensely powerful Rika we know today. And when I say immensely powerful, I do not mean that lightly. Rika on multiple occasions has been stated to have boundless curse energy, like when stated by Ryu and Kenjaku himself. Shortly after defeating Geto in JJK0, Rika's curse is lifted and she vanishes into the sky. But when Yuta appears in the end of Shibuya, she was somehow brought back. At this moment, I'm not sure of how she was brought back, but seeing how far we are into the series, I don't think it really matters at this point. But I do have a theory that I might make a video of in the future. Now we know what Rika is, let's get into her abilities and what she can do. One of the abilities Rika boasts is her weapon storage, making it possible for Yuta to hold multiple weapons for his choosing. Now, the only weapons we've seen him use is the katana and gauntlets, but there were other weapons such as a cleaver, mace, and a big sword. I'm not sure if he can actually use these weapons or that he might just be storing them to learn how to use them at a later date. Nonetheless, he has them. Now to talk about the proficiency he has with these weapons, the first one we're going to be talking about, that being the katana. Now we first see the katana when it's given to Yuta by Gojo, while Gojo is trying to teach Yuta how to control Rika. He says it's nearly impossible to exercise a curse as strong as Rika, but unraveling it is a different case. Analyze the millions of knots of curse energy and unite them one by one. Only you, the cursed one, can do it. He then hands Yuta a katana and then says a curse is most stable when possessing an item. Your connection to Rika came about through a ring. Think of it like a pipe that's already there. After training with Maki, Yuta's proficiency with the weapon is quite weak after only being able to cut the fingers of a cursed spirit. We see quite a big jump when Yuta thinks his friends are dead and goes into an immense rage and goes to attack Geto. Now to be fair, Geto was toying with them, but I do see a big improvement from his fight from the last curse. Although Yuta just loses his katana after he puts too much curse energy into it and it just shatters. A year later, we see him reappear after the Yuji and Choso fight, boasting a new katana as he's there to kill Yuji. We see great improvements after being able to go toe-to-toe with Yuji, being able to cut Yuji's blade in half and then slicing him across his chest. He shows even greater improvements after appearing in the Calling games and is able to kill Drav with, I'm guessing, just his sword alone. Yuta keeps the talent show up after being able to deflect one of Ryu's beams with just his sword alone. After this, he totally dismantles Kuro with his katana as well. Shortly after this, we get introduced to his second weapon we've seen him use, that being the gauntlets. Now it seems the gauntlets only give him access to greater blunt force, but that alone is easily able to keep him up in any fight he needs to. Now we actually don't get to see a lot of the gauntlets. Basically the only thing we see is just him punching Kuro in the back. Now, the second ability we know that Rika has is her curse technique storage, which basically goes hand in hand with Yuta's copy ability. We only get a brief explanation about this when Yuta says Rika is the external storage of curse techniques and curse energy. You remember earlier in the video when I said that ring's going to be very important? This is why it's very important. Now, it's stated in the manga that he can actually only use his copy techniques when it's used through the ring, along with 2 other things we'll talk about later. But the process goes like this: Rika must consume one part of user's body, then Yuta can store the ability inside of Rika's body to use whenever he wants. But not really. For Yuta to be able to use these techniques, he has to use the ring to go into Rika mode, which only lasts for 5 minutes. Which really hasn't been a problem because he's been able to defeat every single opponent despite this fact. Now, Yuta has been able to copy 6 abilities up to this point, that being Jacob's Ladder, Curse Speech, Sky Manipulation, then Icebreaker, Precognition, and Cleave. I'm going to give a brief explanation of what all these techniques do, and we'll start off with Jacob's Ladder. Jacob's Ladder gives him the ability to extinguish any curse technique. This ability has remained his most important curse technique for reasons involving the taking down of Sukuna. The second curse technique being Curse Speech. This allows Yuta to infuse his words with curse energy to improve the spirit of his commands, forcing all those who hear it to obey. Yuta basically only uses this to make people stop. We've seen him use it on a couple of people like Uro and Sukuna, just to make an opening for other attacks. The third ability being Sky Manipulation. This gives Yuta the ability to control the sky like a tangible surface by grabbing a hold and pulling the surrounding atmosphere as if it was a solid sheet or cloak. Yuta basically uses this curse technique in 2 ways: that to either hide behind the atmosphere or to stop all physical attacks. The fourth technique is Thin Icebreaker. Now, we don't actually get a written down explanation of what this does, but it just seems to do a lot of damage. I haven't really seen any ice properties alongside of it, but it has seemed to do a lot of damage in fights. The fifth curse technique is G-War Staff / Precognition. The way this ability works is the user places a manga panel on top of you and then can see the future panels ahead. The way Charles explains it is the same way a reader might glimpse the bottom left panel before they actually get to it. I can take a peek at your very near future. About 1 second in advance as the fight continues and G-War Staff fills with ink, I will be able to see even further into the future. Now, we've only seen Yuta use this once on Sukuna, and when he does use it, he is able to get a punch off, so it seems to be useful. The sixth and final technique is Cleave, which I think is his strongest. Now, this technique just basically gives him the ability to cut things through thin air. We've only seen him use it once as a sneak attack against Sukuna, and he's able to get some decent damage being able to cut his face. Now to talk about the last 2 remaining abilities given through the ring, which is just Rika's complete manifestation and the curse energy supply from Rika. When Rika is fully manifested, she no longer has to join the fights through portals and is actually able to use the entirety of her body and strength. When fully manifested, Rika's strength and durability seems to jump in a large amount, which makes the tag team that Yuta and Rika do even more powerful. Yuta likes to use Rika by doing sneak attacks, combo attacks, and even holding people down so he can get some abilities or punches off. Also, when Rika is fully manifested, Yuta gains the ability to be able to pull curse energy from her gigantic curse energy pool, which grants him even greater speed and strength as well. Now to talk about why Yuta is one of the greatest threats in the world, that being because of his domain. Yuta's domain expansion gives Yuta a barrier that surrounds the battlefield in swords, but these swords are very important as they all contain the curse techniques that he's copied in the past. The manga explains it like this: Yuta Okkutsu's domain is authenticity and mutual love. It selects one curse technique from among those he has copied and stockpiled, and grants it to the barrier as a can't-miss attack. The other curse techniques inhabit the katana within his domain at random. Only Okkotsu can draw upon their effects. Even Okkotsu doesn't know which curse technique is in a particular katana until he takes it in hand. Each katana disappears after it releases its curse technique, but the number of swords is unlimited. This is immensely powerful because he can kinda create pseudo versions of other people's domains, like just making his can't miss Cleave and kinda having a pseudo version of Sukuna's domain. Alongside the fact that the person in the domain also has to fight with Rika, a can't miss, and Yuta all at the same time, kind of making this domain unbeatable. Unless you're Sukuna, of course. After all that's been said, I think it's important to remember that Yuta only wants to protect his friends, and with the abilities that he has, I think he's definitely one of the best that can do it.